So I'm Mike from Haven't Least Hence Mind, covering communications and community engagement.
Yeah, I'm Emma. I'm the marketing and PR manager at Hampshire FA.
Yes, I'm Brandon, third year student at Solent University studying football studies.
Yep, I'm Zacki, studying football studies as well.
My name is Imran. I'm a student at Solent University studying football.
Awesome. So today we are going to be sitting down and talking through kind of mental health in sport, some of the links and some of our thought processes around that, and also kind of particularly referencing, I guess, that this Thursday, the 4th of March, is going to be University Mental Health Day. So a really good opportunity for us to kind of reflect on the impact that it has within a university setting for students as well during what's been quite a very difficult and different year. So yeah, I guess to kick us off, really, it's an opportunity for us to ask you guys as students of one of our local universities, your thoughts around kind of how does sport affect or support your well-being?
Yeah, I can go. So essentially, I just think sport and mental well-being kind of go hand in hand. I think it's really important. It's a really important thing to have. And by playing sport, you release endorphins, and by doing that, it's just a really positive thing on the body. And for example, if I relate it to myself, if I wake up in the morning and go for a run, I've already won in my eyes. No, that's already like the first battle of the day, and I've won it. So I'm ready to face any other battle that I come across within the day, whether that's university, whether that's anything really. Just getting rid of that first barrier and going on that run, for me personally, mentally, it's really important. And I feel I work better once I've trained. It has a really positive impact on my mental well-being. So that's just speaking from a personal point of view. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, so for me, I think it really supports your mental well-being because of the social aspects. So with sport, you can obviously create these relationships with, let's say we're talking about football, coaches, teammates, even parents. It can strengthen the bond of your parents. So for example, a personal story with me wouldn't be with football, but instead I've done jiu-jitsu for a little bit, and it helps sort of bond that relationship with my dad because he's always had an interest in martial arts. And we also know that if you are experiencing these mental health problems, that creating these relationships just implies more support networks for you to get through these problems. So I think it's also it's great for that as well.
I think mental health and sport really go together because it's, for me personally, it's a way to get out of all the stress that someone might be having, especially in terms of a home environment. A good example would be a child who's having lots of family issues, might be looking forward to playing football at 3 p.m. So once they step out of that door, they have all this freedom of expression, a chance to build their self-esteem, a chance to build their self-confidence. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you guys have said. I think it really does physically sort of help your body and mind. And also, I think the one thing that we've definitely noticed at Hampshire FA, and I know at the FA and our sort of county FAs around us, is that football and sport in general, especially over the last year where it's had to be postponed, there's thousands and thousands of people just in Hampshire alone that have been either stuck indoors or they've been taken out of their team, that environment, that routine. And it's really hard to sort of see the impact that being taken out of sport in any environment in your routine has had on people. And I guess now it's looking forward in the sense of, how are we going to overcome this hurdle and sort of make people feel comfortable about coming back and sort of improving that mental health conversation and reducing those stigmas that are obviously going to arise from this pandemic as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really big one that Emma picks up on there. The kind of I suppose the far-reaching aspect that sport has. Kind of, we're all naturally thinking about kind of our involvement quite physically in the sport as an athlete or a performer, but it reaches kind of far wider than that with supporters and clubs and kind of different volunteers and paid members of staff as well. I guess this year, as we mentioned, has been a very different one, with many sports being paused, postponed, cancelled. It's been an opportunity to kind of reflect, try new things, maybe try an activity or a sport that you hadn't before, or maybe just try it in a different way. Over the last year or so, have there been different activities or sports that any of you have tried or picked up through this year, and maybe a little bit of an insight as to whether you're going to carry those on as well?
Right. I think I'll start. For me, I've started doing yoga from I think last year September every morning. I think it's for me it's a way to for me to really take my mind off a lot of things that has been going on around the world and within my environment. It's helped me to concentrate better on what I hope to do in the day. So me being able to wake up every morning and do a yoga session has helped me a lot. Yeah.
And with me, it's definitely not sporting, but it's something I picked up during lockdown because obviously you got a lot of time by yourself. Was starting to learn guitar, and I think it's helped because you're mastering a skill, and there I see some correlations with sport where you're improving, I guess, your self-esteem, because you can measure your improvement quite easily with learning guitar, and it's also quite nice just to show off to your family members or something a song you just learned.
Yeah, following on from that, 100%. I mean, for me personally, cooking is something that I've always loved doing, but with this lockdown, it's just given me a lot more time to try different kind of dishes, different cuisines, and I really enjoy doing that. So, I like to, for example, I like to go on my run in the morning, come back, make a nice meal. I like to mix it up. I'm watching a few Gordon Ramsay tutorials on YouTube, just trying to learn new dishes, new ways of cooking. And I feel it's just great for my mind, and it just sets me up so well for the rest of the day. And it's just something I absolutely love doing, and I'm going to continue doing it after lockdown 100%. Emma, I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing what you guys are saying, it just resonates so much. I think with myself personally, I've picked up probably about 20 new hobbies, and I keep recycling them every other week. Because we've all got that sort of spare time, more time. Obviously, we're not commuting to places. A lot of us are working or studying from home, for example. The one thing I have noticed, Zacki, what you're saying about cooking especially, is a lot of our sort of grassroots clubs are really getting involved in trying to do other things to support the mental health of their players and volunteers, other than just sort of, the physical side where we can't go outside and we can't see each other. A lot of them are doing Great British Bake Offs, for example, and I think that's amazing. I'm seeing on social media a lot of amazing cooking. When I try and cook it, it definitely doesn't turn out how well some of the under 17s have created a 3-tier cake. So I think it's the creativity as well, especially of the sort of volunteers, grassroots teams, referees, coaches, players that we have in Hampshire, and just the sort of the diversity of hobbies and things that they're picking up, just to not only support their mental health, but also their team, their sort of, people around them as well. So I think it is the sort of, the new hobbies and the time that people have had is, it's really, I guess, a positive that has come out of this pandemic for sure.
100%. It's just a great skill to learn, just for life as well.
Definitely.
It's nice to hear kind of a spread of things there as well, I think, from kind of the physical activities to kind of other, I guess, almost like crafts as well, I think sort of fits into that as well. The baking, the music, I think there's lots of kind of different things that we're starting to think about how that incorporates into our general well-being and our health as well. And I think that's a really nice kind of thought process to start. And a couple of you picked up there on as well, the kind of the interaction that's happening within some of our club settings, the different types of support and communication that's happening. And I guess along those lines, kind of thinking about mental health within club settings, what sort of kind of symptoms or what signs do you think we might be able to spot within some of our club settings that might sort of prompt us to do some of those, like you say, like kind of doing a shared baking activity or checking in on people? What are some of the signs that we might see within some of the club settings?
Yeah, so I'll go. So for example, if I'm related to my team and you know the boys that I'm playing football with, you know your teammates and you play with them enough to know kind of like the habits that they have. And if you can slowly, maybe enough if it's one day, but if after a few training sessions you can see something's not quite up, maybe they're not as talkative as they are, that's a symptom already. Communication, that's just an important symptom. It's something that maybe having a conversation with them and trying to push them in a certain direction to maybe try and find some help or just something along those lines. That's a symptom that I find it's quite easy to spot, and I think it's just having that easy 5-10 minute conversation can really go a long way.
Yeah, with those symptoms as well, it could be quite difficult. So for me, I'd be talking as a perspective of a coach, and you may see these symptoms such as loss of confidence, perhaps loss of motivation, and then maybe just because you've seen it once doesn't automatically mean that it's mental health issues. It could be just a simple normal reaction. For example, maybe they've had a bad game, so they have a bit of lost confidence there. However, when it starts turning into more consistently and maybe affects them outside of football as well, that's probably where you might need to have a chat. Also, I think we need to do better with anticipating the problems. So, for example, this may go to the more elite level, but with a career transition, and you see players move out and luckily they get another job in football, maybe coaching or working as a pundit because they've used that skill that they've already had. But a lot of mental health issues can come from this career transition, such as a loss of identity. And because when you're retiring, you're so used to this sport and it's been part of your life from, since you're in the academy to maybe when you're 35 and retiring, and it's suddenly taken away from you, you may feel this sort of low self-esteem. And in the worst cases, it could actually turn into drug abuse and gambling issues, which we have seen before. So I think in terms of spotting issues, we need to. It's complicated because it's not as simple as this person is experiencing this, therefore that. You need to see a pattern, and I think we also need to do better in anticipating the problems.
Yeah, I think my point is relates to what Emma said about people leaving the sport and not being able to have that decision to come back. I think a major point would be being able to have a welcoming environment. So most players or coaches or managers or people, when they enter a new setting, there's always that fear that the environment might not be so welcoming. So I think for people to be able to get into a new environment and be able to interact with people who are environment friendly, people friendly, who can, potentially build relationships, I think that's very important. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just making notes as well, so I just don't forget some of the things you said, because I think they're just so prominent as well in society and also in football, because I guess we've always said, like, people that work in football, I guess you guys see it as well, that with football you can really sort of study human behaviour and society if you're getting quite deep into the psychology of it. So mental health is of course very prominent, and I think, Brandon, what you said about having the transition from maybe a player, for example, in a club, we definitely see it on a grassroots level. This is one of the reasons, obviously, why we partnered with having it in East Hants Mines, for example, is because, just for an example, we had a player who got seriously injured. They were, really good, in and out 3-4 times a week probably at that club, local club, grassroots, and they unfortunately got injured and they couldn't play again. And ever since then, it was sort of we were very aware. We were in sort of talks with the club, what can we do to help. So we did sort of what we could do to help, signposting, sort of, I think that kick-started for Hampshire FA the whole every staff member now has mental health first aid training, for example, just so we are prepared and aware of everything that can happen in a sort of club setting. And I think when I'm not sure which one of you has said it, but it's not as easy to identify, I guess, sort of we're all different. One sort of symptom isn't going to fit everyone, is it? So it's a case of some people can hide it a lot better than others. But if you do have those relationships, it's really good to, like what you were saying, Zacki, if you have those relationships with those people and you know how to approach them, maybe without being too sort of overwhelming. You don't want to sort of overwhelm them. Also, maybe if you've got people that you trust and that you can talk to, either in the club setting or maybe, out of the club setting. So, for example, charities such as Mind, just some advice and sort of way to move forward. But I think it's having that empathy, isn't it? Not just for people that but maybe, if you're playing a Sunday league game and you see that the referee, for example, might be looking just, you've never seen that before. You've never seen like a referee who doesn't necessarily have the same support system in a club environment, for example. Having that empathy to sort of maybe, just a few nice words, go up, see if everything's okay and so on. And I think that's where a lot of the generation sort of coming up now, and also the current workforce working in football is working really well to sort of reduce that stigma and be able to communicate and talk and identify these symptoms.
I think a lot of really good points there picked up by all of you. I think, definitely that potential career change, kind of whether it happens naturally because the person has kind of got past their peak with their performance, whether it's a sudden injury. I think that's going to be a big change for someone. I think kind of a combination of some of the points that Zacki and Imran made around also looking at if you've got club members that start to not attend or not behave in the way that they had previously, kind of being a potential prompt for a conversation. I suppose kind of what Emma's mentioning there is also saying we don't know why that's happening, and it's not going to be for the same reasons, but actually what a great opportunity to be prompted by that to take some form of action. And I think also recognizing, again, we have talked, I think, quite naturally around players and coaches because of the experience in the room, but also picking up, I think, a couple of you there, Emma, referencing kind of officials and referees. We've seen recently kind of the impact at the kind of elite level that some referees and officials are really being put under quite a high level of pressure. So we've picked up on a range of different things that could be seen within a club setting, that we can see within our clubs. And if we had seen something that kind of prompted us to feel like, I want to do something, what sort of things could we do within our club settings, within sport, within football?
I think the first thing that would probably be the best is refer to someone who has such experience in terms of dealing with mental health issues or mental health problems. I think most of the time the people that we normally go to are close friends or parents, people who are accessible. I think the challenge is finding the people who do have those qualifications or do have experience in dealing with such mental problems, because it's not easy to identify someone face to face who has such qualifications. So I think for me personally, it would be first parents or close friends, and then I think the cycle will probably build on from there, and then your parents or your close friends would refer you to someone else, probably your GP or someone who could potentially help you in that situation. So
yeah, I agree completely with Imran, and touching on what Emma said earlier, just getting rid of that first barrier, having empathy with your teammate, and just to have those first conversations. And as Emma said, a lot of club members now are trained to deal with these kinds of situations, so just encouraging the players to go and have the conversations with them. And if they find that difficult, that's fine, just always showing the empathy and showing that you're always there for them. Just little conversations can go a long way. And yeah, that's personally how I would deal with it.
Yeah, so for me, it would be obviously you're offering that emotional support, and like Zacki said, you're showing empathy and trying to understand the situation they're in, and like you want to listen non-judgmentally, and you don't want to tell them that they're wrong. You know, say things like, "Oh, yeah, you're always smiling, you're always happy," because they're coming out to you. It's a really key moment. As for myself and how I deal with it, I don't have the knowledge to kind of deal with it professionally or with education in that matter. So I would, like Imran said, I would have to refer it on. But this could be something that you can answer for me, Emma, because I don't exactly have the knowledge on who that person would be in terms of who I refer that information onto.
Yeah, definitely. So in our clubs, there's I think it was you, Imran, who mentioned about identifying sort of officials or volunteers in club settings. I think that's the biggest thing when joining the club, identifying sort of who actually runs the club. Majority of the clubs should all have welfare officers. So the welfare officers will they are trained to sort of signpost you or be able to support you in that aspect. And maybe someone that you can talk to, you can go to, and maybe if you're worried about a teammate or a coach or someone else, they'll be good to sort of just have a little chat to and get your head around it as well, because it can have an impact on yourself if you're seeing someone else with suffering from mental health problems, because sometimes we don't know how to deal with every case that we come by as well. I think the biggest thing is obviously, like this season we partnered with Mind, for example, because we realised the importance of mental health ambassadors in our club settings. The stigma has been reduced so much with mental health, which has allowed us all to have this conversation, for example, and many other organisations to do the same. So to have the opportunity to train people to become mental health ambassadors for club settings will be a real step in the right direction. So we pre-COVID, unfortunately, it's been postponed, but we were putting on mental health first aid courses, as I mentioned earlier, and there was members from clubs who came and joined these mental health first aid courses, and it was a case of them being able to discuss actually what goes on as well in their club and why they're there. So yeah, so I think there's things in place already where you can be signposted, you can be supported. If any club is in doubt or they don't feel comfortable talking to people in their sort of in their setting, then we'd advise contact us as well, like contact Hampshire FA. One of us obviously will be more than happy to sort of answer the emails, pick up the phone, all of our details on the website as well. So if people feel like, for example, they'll feel more comfortable talking to an actual person that they know at Hampshire FA, that person will be more than happy to sort of support and signpost. And then also as well, like I said, partnered up with Mind just to sort of support that further and also help our staff signpost. So I think there's a lot of things that have been done and are in place to support people in a club setting, and there's also things in place to improve that even more. And I think it's discussions like this that we can really understand what is needed and how to move forward for everyone's mental health.
I think that's a really key point that Emma mentions at the end there, isn't it? Is that kind of encouraging more of these conversations to happen further forward. We are prompted by the fact kind of it's University Mental Health Day and we want to speak to you, but actually there are a lot of other occasions that could be prompts for similar conversations as well. And I think that in part is behind some of the work that we've done with Hampshire FA already, where we've had kind of online fortnightly discussions on social media through the winter and looking at kind of how that can, or when that would return and how that would be useful for people. The Ambassadors Project is another great way for us to look at that. But I think it was Brandon in a previous question actually that mentioned about kind of being reactive, and it feels like at the moment we're kind of getting to that bridge where we're starting to be proactive, but it's very much the beginning of let's be forward thinking. Let's think about actually, yeah, you are all kind of confident enough and educated enough to approach someone and host that conversation, but then where does it go from there? And I think that's where we are now in trying to make sure that as Emma mentioned, you're aware of all of the people within inside your club setting, of your safeguarding or welfare officer, that you're aware of kind of those external contacts as well, people at Hampshire FA, people at local charities that you can contact. And I think that's where we are at the moment in trying to kind of build that up and kind of utilise your existing compassion and kindness and willingness to support your club members and other people within your local communities as well. I think that kind of feels like that's where we are at the moment.
Just quickly, can I just say on that point? Coincidentally, I was playing football this morning with one of my friends, and he's had his own personal issues with mental health, and it's quite interesting because he told me he's seen therapists and he's gone to all of these, he's tried all the programs, and he said that when he's talking to a therapist, it's not the same because he knows in the back of his mind that they're paid to kind of be there, and they're going to support him because that's their job. But he kind of felt do they really care? Of course they care, but do they? He said for him personally, it was conversations like the ones he was having with me today that really helped him, because he knows that I'm his friend and that I'm actually, that I actually care for him. Whereas, I'm not getting paid to have the conversation. He just said that it's conversations like that. So maybe sometimes in club settings, it can be those first conversations that can go a really long way. And yeah, that's just the point I thought.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Zacki. I think it's a really good insight into the different needs that people have as well. Sometimes they do need that kind of professional, structured care and support. And sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. And they need to know that person is kind of there and they've got their back. And I think people that have kind of those existing friendships, relationships, I think that there is that opportunity there. So really good to hear that you're able to kind of be that support for someone else as well. I think that's a nice way to round off that talking point, I think. We've mentioned this a little bit in a couple of our answers, but in regards to having kind of professional or elite level players, maybe even coaches or officials, kind of what's your views on having those people speaking quite publicly around kind of mental health, around mental health illnesses and maybe certain things that people have experienced in their own lives?
I'll go. So I think that when you see people at the elite, it can really go a long way, because it's great people having conversations with, but for example, especially for younger people that are suffering with these issues, when they go and watch the TV and they see Raheem Sterling or Marcus Rashford come out and start having these conversations about mental health. Or, for example, I think a great person to talk about is Tyson Fury, the boxer. So, he's very open about his struggles. And, when you see maybe a 14, 15-year-old kid and he watches the TV and he sees heavyweight champion of the world, Tyson Fury, who some people might see as he could never suffer from any mental health issues. He's heavyweight champion of the world. But the fact that he's coming out in the media and being very open about his struggles and the issues that he faces allows 14 and 15-year-olds to go, do you know what? I'm gonna talk about it as well. And I feel just those elite, them doing those kind of things. You see, Andros Townsend comes out, talks about his gambling addictions. It really helps this younger people come out, and I think we're seeing that with a lot of statistics. Things are hopefully as well for the future going to get a lot better.
Touching on what Zacki just said there, and how players kind of give up their stories, I think that's so much more effective and powerful when they actually give up a part of their story. So, like I said, Andros Townsend, Tyson Fury, the BBC done a really good documentary on mental health, which included quite a few players. Danny Rose, Peter Crouch, Gareth Southgate, Thierry Chinison, I think there's more. And just that little talk around, in the locker room on that documentary was so insightful. For example, you had Peter Crouch talking about his body image, and that's sort of something you wouldn't expect from an athlete. And obviously with the emergence of social media, particularly Instagram, that's going to be a topic that a lot of young people are facing right now. Also, with football being quite male dominated, it's obviously opened up more and more now to obviously the women's game's growing a lot more, which is great, but it is quite male dominated still. And we also know that men struggle to talk about these things. So I think it's a really good that we're hitting the target audience here of mental health. People are directly suffering from it and struggle to open up about it. Having these great role models, like Zacki said, open out and hopefully starting the discussion.
Yeah, I think apologies for the noise as a kid. I think we just falling down. I think I think for players, professional players, to really come out and speak about such situations and issues. I think it's really important because when you think about it, it's actually something that they've gone through since they were a child, since they were born. Um, and just being able to interact on TV and kids being able to see professional players express themselves and be able to talk about such things that normally people wouldn't really be able to talk about comfortably. I think it's really opened people's minds. Um, this when I was volunteering in my high school as a PE teacher, I of course I played football for the school team since I was about 12, 13 until I graduated. But most of the kids really looked up to me, particularly because I was the captain, and I'd always make sure that everyone had a chance in playing for the team. Um, there came a point where some of the teachers asked me to have a talk with some of the students in the lower classes, and I think me being able to talk to them, being able to understand what some of them go through, I think it made me realize that some of the stuff that they're discussing with me, they aren't able to discuss with the teachers because they see me or other people who have played in the team as someone who knows what it means to go through such incidences. So I think opening up with people who are close to you, I think it's really important, and we've seen throughout the Premier League such organisations, Black Lives Matter, as well as Minds and Hampshire FA. I think overall the FA, I think they've done a good job so far, but I think in the future it will get better, hopefully, for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think, I guess, on a professional level, footballers and sports people in general, I guess a lot of people in that spotlight they're seen, or they used to be seen, as completely untouchable. They live these sort of, perfect lives. They've got these, houses. They've got this lifestyle. They play football for a living, or they play sport for a living. And I guess there was always that disconnect between us, I guess, as fans and the players. And a lot of people always thought, they're not affected. They've got everything. How can they be affected by mental health? And I think by these players coming out and talking about their own experiences, it goes back, I think, what you all said. It sort of, you can relate to them, and it's really sort of, hitting the stigma, with obviously with what the FA are doing at the moment, with the Heads Up campaign, and with the FA Cup, for example, really boosting, like, getting the conversation going. I think, Brandon, you mentioned it about the BBC programme about getting people together to actually, it's similar to what we're doing now, but on a sort of scale where, it's well-known players and managers talking about mental health, and it really resonates with everyone. And not only does it sort of reduce that stigma, it also allows sort of us as the fans to then feel like we're more connected to those players and build a relationship like with those players, and feel like, actually we have that understanding, we can completely relate to them. If they're saying that they go through this, it's perfectly okay to feel like this. We're all going through it, which then in turn has really, we've noticed that it opens up another sort of channel where we have grassroots influencers. So Imran, from what you're saying, where you were obviously a good sort of influencer when you were a PE teacher, when you're volunteering as a PE teacher and a captain, we're sort of identifying these people in sort of clubs and our grassroots settings where they feel like they have a lot of influence over their teams, their players, their friends. They sort of can have a little chat to people, and it's given them the sort of education tools as well to support people in those settings. So I think, going back to the question, like, it really does help where these sort of players, influencers, professional sports people, when they talk about it, is reducing the stigma, but it's also allowing a sort of new path to open for people to sort of understand what is happening.
I really like that as a prompt. I guess we've sort of drifted a little bit from the question, and I quite like that in regards to going. I think generally there's a consensus that it's really important, and it's great to see kind of a elite level professional players, coaches, officials speaking about this. But equally, there's a role, there's an opportunity and an importance for those kind of grassroots leaders to take that opportunity. And I think really nicely kind of explained there by Imran as well, how kind of you within this conversation are fulfilling that role within some of your clubs, some of your teams, maybe even within your course or at your university of students. I think there's opportunities to be a leader or a role model in a lot of different settings. And again, I think that probably overlaps with some of the work we're doing with ambassadors. So I think it's really nice, that kind of recognition of elite level, but also the importance of the people that you're around and that are around you as well. And I guess with that in mind, kind of our final kind of talking point around how can football, and I guess more widely sport, continue to promote and support mental health and well-being in the future? So we're looking at hopefully kind of gradually coming out of lockdown and restrictions and sport and teams gradually returning. But how can athletes, clubs, teams continue to support mental well-being moving forward?
I think, well, to begin with, I think talks like this should become more regular, particularly when it becomes a chance for students, for people who are new to certain environments, new to universities, new to different settings. I think it's important for people to note what people who are new to the environment have to say about such issues. I think in overall organizations and different institutions have put in place certain factors and certain rules to abide to, and I think that has gone worldwide. I think the media has done well to project these rules and these settings that people have put in place. So I think overall there should be a continuous plan set up by everyone who should be involved. So I think it's a plan for continuous generations. Yeah. Your mic is.
Oh, we nearly got all the way through.
Sorry about that, guys. It's the washing machine in the background. I didn't want you to hear it. Right, touching on what Imran said. So I think that it's quite similar to, like, for example, racism. So like you see in the Black Lives Matter movement. It's all good, like all of these initiatives and programs in place, and they're definitely helping. But like, you'll see a player, for example, he'll wear like a mental health t-shirt or a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, but then you ask, like, what is it actually doing? And from like a lot of research that I've done it's more on the racism side, but I feel like they link, because I think it's a case of education. So when you see young people, even from the age of 8, 9 in primary schools, this is my view. I feel like if we can be teaching kids that it's okay, once you get older, these issues that you might be facing, they're normal. And then I think we start to slowly eradicate that stigma of it's like, I don't want to come out and talk about it. And obviously, in terms of, if we look at the elite level, you're going to have fans that are idiots. You're going to have fans that are still going to be racist. You're going to have fans that, if someone comes out and is open about their mental health, they're going to shout something stupid from the stands. But I think that the more that people are educated, we'll see in future generations that it improves, and those fans will start to slowly eradicate from the stadium and slowly start to go and fade away. And yeah, so for me, I just think education is a massive factor. I think it can make a huge difference in the future.
Yeah, I really agree with education, and in particular, yet again, come from a perspective of a coach, of the people on the front line, So, for example, coaches, like we talked today about some of the signs you might want to be aware of for your players and such, and just that education that, for example, I now have from going to uni and being taught these units surrounded around mental health. I feel so much better as a coach and to interact with my players. Also, I think coaches need to understand the environments that they can create can sometimes be a detriment to the mental health of a player. For example, I know Imran mentioned, I think early on, that sport could be used to kind of relieve stress and take your mind off things. But it's also possible that it can add stress depending on the environment you create as a coach. So, for example, maybe you're working with a young team and you have a high focus on the results as a high level performing environment. It can then be a detriment to the mental health rather than using sport for a positive. So yeah, I just think education of coaches in terms of spotting these signs, and also, you know, the significance they have in creating these environments.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you've all sort of touched on is the education, communication, understanding of sort of the people around you, no matter sort of what role that you play. The big thing I think is coming out of obviously this pandemic. We've had a year of football, grassroots football, obviously in particular, being postponed and restarted. So you're going back and forth, and it's really had an effect on people's mental health with their routine, with, like, you know, they're looking forward to getting back into the swing of things, and all of a sudden it's been taken away again. So it's going to be there's definitely going to be hurdles that are going to be faced. It's what we do now. So for example, working with Mind to get that support as well, so we can not only like educate ourselves, we can then educate our sort of members on how to sort of safeguard themselves from their mental health, in the sense of if it is getting to the point where they do need help, we can hopefully easily help them. And also, when it was introducing the courses as well, I think working a lot more with organisations where we can introduce a course, maybe alongside obviously first aid, which is to do with your physical health. Everyone needs that if they're working in the club. A first aid, someone needs to be first aid trained. Same with safeguarding, someone needs to be safeguarding trained. So when it comes to mental health, obviously that can affect someone just as much as physical health. So people in the club having the opportunity to go on mental health courses. So yeah, definitely, I think there's going to be a lot of hurdles, especially after this pandemic. But I think if there's one positive that has come out of it, it's really sort of boosted these conversations that we all should continue having, and also sort of promoting action as well, definitely.
Yeah, I think you've all mentioned education there, and I think it's a massive thing. I think we'd like to think we're doing quite a good job with that awareness raising. I'd like to think that there's quite a good level of kind of shared community awareness around mental health. I think I'm conscious that there will always be some people that haven't kind of received that message, that are today kind of thinking about this for the first time, that haven't been part of these conversations before. But generally, I think kind of public awareness has raised. And we've kind of seen that through some of the communications that have come out around the pandemic. Mental health has been quite a big part of that. And I think that, yeah, we are now moving into that stage where it's how do we incorporate that initial interest, that initial awareness into education, into being proactive, into supporting people within their kind of existing communities and environments. I think that's kind of like the next big thing for us to be working on. And utilise that bit of attention now. There's, like you say, there's been a lot of, hopefully there's going to be a lot of changes in sport as we see it return, and people have that opportunity to reconnect and re-engage with sport, with their clubs and with their teams. And hopefully this is an opportunity for us to be part of that kind of return to sport, and to pick up on that initial connection. But I think it's been a good conversation to talk through kind of both, I guess, where we are and where we'd like to be, starting to think about that forward journey. But yeah, it's been lovely to sit down and to have a conversation and to hear your thoughts. And Thank you so much to Emma from Hampshire FA for sharing her insight and for the work that we continue to do on other projects, and to Brandon, Zacki and Imran from Solent University for sharing their insight as well. And I think particularly today, when this video goes out as part of the University Mental Health Day, I think really important to consider that aspect. We've focused very much on kind of the sports side of being a student and being an athlete. But there are many other aspects to it as well. So I think a really important day for people to pick up and think about how mental health is affecting students in what has been a very difficult and a very different year, and will continue to be probably for the rest of this calendar year as well. But thank you so much to everyone for coming along today, for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah.